Hey, what's up, guys? Today we're looking at whether people in some countries suffer more from acne than people in other countries, and if so, why that might be the case. Now, first off, we look at this study that uses data from the Global Burden of Disease study, which was a huge scientific collaboration over many years that looked at all sorts of diseases globally, how prevalent they are, how often people die from them. And so it's a huge data set that's very valuable for medical research. And so this one looks at skin disease. And it notes that at the global level, skin conditions were the fourth leading cause of non-fatal disease burden, and that these results urge strongly to include skin disease prevention and treatment in future global health strategies as a matter of urgency. So perhaps a somewhat neglected field with a strong impact on human health. And here we see how the different types of skin diseases affect people over the course of their life globally. This is not prevalence, meaning not how often a disease occurs, but years lost to disease, so how strongly it impacted people and sort of ruined the quality of life of people suffering from the disease. And we see that in the teenage years, acne, the orange area, peaks, and it is still prevalent though, well until the 30s and 40s. And overall, acne seems to affect about 10% of the global population, making it the 8th most prevalent disease worldwide. And among the skin diseases, it might actually be the most prevalent one, especially in older teens. But now the question is it distributed equally around the world? Do all countries suffer about the same from acne, or are there differences? And again, we're looking at data from the Global Burden of Disease study, and here we see very clearly that there are strong differences in how prevalent acne is in different countries. We see at the bottom, the tendency is that those are countries from areas such as Africa, from parts of Asia, and towards the top, the tendency is that those are oftentimes Western countries. And this data also shows how strong or how much the prevalence of acne has changed over the last 2 decades. And although those lines seem almost flat because it's quite a long time span, actually when you look at the numbers, acne prevalence in many countries has risen by about 50%, sometimes even more than that, over the course of 20 years, or 30 years, sorry, close to 30 years. So that's quite dramatic to have a disease increase in its rate by 50 and maybe even 70, 80, 90% over such a short time span. So quite alarming. And here we see a few things in this graphic. We see that on average, developed countries show higher prevalence of acne. We see that for all ages, that is. And we see that in both developed and developing countries, acne prevalence is higher in females than it is in males. So then the question is this perhaps a different due to different races in those countries? Might perhaps some Asian populations or Caucasian populations be more prone to acne than those other races? And we actually talked about this in the video on acne and race. And as it turns out, even though there are oftentimes different prevalences reported, those do not seem to be causal, but rather a result of different lifestyles and different environmental factors, as this study hypothesized as well. More on that in the video on acne and race. Now, there are actually a few populations that don't show any acne. Now, those have been discovered in the 1990s, and I say discovered because those are not typical countries that are in interaction with the rest of the world on global trade or whatever it is, but those are rather isolated populations. For example, near Papua New Guinea, we have the Kitawa Islanders, or in the rainforests of South America, we have the Aceh hunter-gatherers. And here researchers discovered that not a single case of acne was found in those populations. And I'm talking like not even a single blackhead, not just no bad papules, no bad acne, but nothing. And even in parts of Japan, shortly after World War II, when physicians visited Okinawa, an island that is quite remote from the mainlands, physicians also reported that apparently acne was an unknown disease in this on this island. And so one might wonder again, is this due to genetics? Are those populations genetically different? And although this might be a part of the explanation, it seems pretty unreasonable, since some of those populations, or populations very closely related to them, when being exposed to modern lifestyle, modern diet, air pollution, whatever it is, developed acne just like any other race, ethnicity has as well. And so there are a few factors that we still need to analyze to really find out what the concrete reason for those differences are. As this study notes, while the findings of these studies are intriguing, they have not yet been repeated in other indigenous populations apart from the three I mentioned. Further evaluation of diet, dairy ingestion, P. acne phenotypes and loads, meaning this type of bacteria that is associated with acne, hormonal assessments are all potential pathogenic interests. So that means that when we're talking about Propionibacterium acnes, or Cutibacterium acnes as it is now called, perhaps there are different strains of this bacteria. And on some of those populations, maybe they have different bacterial microbiome on their skin, which might protect them from acne. So those are all theories. However, there is good indication that diet is perhaps the most important factor, as it is explained in this study and others. It seems to be likely that those differences we see are in fact due to diet, and so we should use that tool to combat acne as well as a baseline treatment. All right, and with that, I thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.